Hello there, CriterioNate here. You wouldn't know it by looking at me, but I'm 97 years old. I was born under unusual circumstances. No, I'm 28. That's not bullshit. People don't age backwards. Oh, dear fucking Christ. I mean, alright, so a lot of people like this movie. And it was big. I mean, it's funny, it didn't win Best Picture or didn't win, like Best Actors, Actress. It won for like artwork, or the makeup and stuff like that. So I don't feel bad about, tearing this one a new one, because I am going to. So if you do like this movie, I would just go ahead and just skip. Anyway, number 476, David Fincher's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. 2008, 165 minutes, color, 5.1 Dolby Digital. I think it's the first time I ever had to say those words. What happened to black and white monaural? 2.40 to 1 aspect ratio. Yeah. Now, like I remember when this came out. I was back in college, at the tender age of 70. I remember watching a little bit of it when I was with a roommate, and like it sounded interesting. It sounded like an interesting concept. Okay, I was like, I watched like maybe 10, 15. I was kind of drifting in and out of the movie, and I remember, and I just was like, intrigued by it. I thought it was an interesting concept about a guy born and ages backwards. I'm like, okay, well, there you go. But the more I grew up, the more I thought about it. I'm like, oh no, this isn't going to end well. Especially when I realized how terrible of a goddamn actress Cate Blanchett is. I'm sorry, she is awful. I mean, I've already had to put up with her in the fucking Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I have to put up with her again. Oh, God. But the other side of the coin, Brad Pitt in a Criterion Collection movie. What the fuck? Notwithstanding the fact that Criterion just recently announced that they're putting Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life into the Criterion Collection, which I'm not looking forward to, because that has Jessica Chastain in it. I can't stand her. But Brad Pitt, I mean, I have nothing really against Brad Pitt, really, but just I've never thought of him to be, Criterion Collection material, but here, the fates has denied me, fates have changed me up again, or whatever. Anyway, so, yes, I saw it, wasted my time, complete waste of time. I think this movie is extremely overrated. It doesn't deserve nearly half the accolades it got, if any of them. I think it's one of those movies like August Rush or something, where if you believe in magic long enough, and if you just have an inquisitive mind and dreamer and all that, then it's like, hey, this is going to be an amazing ride for you. You can believe in things and love conquers all and shit. Well, that doesn't happen. I'm sorry. I'm here to tell you that it's all bullcrap. So, yeah. I wouldn't recommend this one movie. Plot. Benjamin Button. Well, okay. So the movie is told from the deathbed of Daisy, who is Cate Blanchett's character. And Daisy was, Benjamin's lover. Daisy and their daughter, Caroline, played by Julia Ormond, who's amazing, by the way. Julia Ormond is fantastic. And does a great job in this movie, too. It reads Benjamin Button's diary throughout basically to Daisy as she dies. And now the other part that I didn't like about this movie was that the fact that it's set in, I think, August of 2005, or during the time that Hurricane Katrina was hitting. And I feel like that was kind of making a little light of the situation. I don't know. There was just something about, bringing a real-life hurricane that devastated millions of lives into this love story. I feel like that was kind of... It was pointless. I mean, like, if it would have been any other hurricane, whatever, just make up a hurricane. But it had to be this one specific thing that, hurt a lot of people. So I really don't quite understand why that needed to be in there. But anyway, so the majority of the whole movie told in flashback from their death, from her Daisy's deathbed, and apparently it all starts with this guy who builds a clock that runs backwards for like all the boys in the wars back in the 1918 or something like that. And I guess Benjamin Button was apparently born on Armistice Day. And I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it. November 11th, 1918. And when he's born, his mother dies or something, and he's born with really wrinkly face and very weak arthritis and stuff like that. And his father ends up abandoning him on the porch of this this home, where this lady, Miss Queenie, played by Taraji P. Henson, whom, by the way, I don't like her either. But that's a whole other thing. He's left on the doorstep, and she raises Benjamin as her own, and she is confused by, all of his, how he grows, and the fact that, he's an old man. He's mentally 5 years old, but physically he's like 80, 70 something or other, and all that. And so, yeah, basically the movie just shows him growing backwards. He grows up, he starts to walk, and even though he's older, and so at the age of 17 or 18, he's like 60, like in his late 60s or something. I don't quite remember where the synchronicity is. I don't actually know where the levels synchronize. But anyway, so he ends up meeting, while he's, as an old man, he ends up meeting Daisy, who's a kid, as an actual kid, because nobody else is as weird as Benjamin. And so he ends up getting a job. As he's old enough, he gets a job working on a tugboat, and he goes off to sea. Daisy becomes a dancer, and at one point he ends up having an affair with one of the Prime Minister's wives, Elizabeth Abbott, played by Tilda Swanson, who's not bad. She's actually a pretty good actress too. And so they end up, I guess, he's on the tugboat, and I guess during the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and they end up getting attacked, and everybody dies except for Benjamin. And so he ends up he goes back to the home, and Daisy's there, and they reunite, and she wants to have sex with him, and he says no, and so she gets upset and leaves. And I guess at this point, Thomas Button, Benjamin's father, comes back into his life and tells him that it reveals that he's his father. And so later on, I guess in the 1940s now, he ends up going to visit Daisy at the theater she's dancing with in New York. But she's got a lover at this time. And so anyway, he ends up, they're together. And then there's the really interesting scene, which, like, I don't know how to say it. Like, I knew what was happening. I knew what was coming. But it's one of those really, like, prolonged scenes where he talks about, where basically Daisy ends up getting into a car accident and getting hit and breaking her leg and basically forfeiting her entire dance career. But they do it in that, like, if the cab driver hadn't gotten an extra cup of coffee, and if Daisy's shoelace hadn't broken, or all that, or her friend's shoelace hadn't broken, and if the moving truck hadn't moved out at that time, then maybe she wouldn't have gotten hit and all that. And so it's like part of me kind of doesn't like thought, okay, really predictable, but at the same time, those it's like, all right, well, that's probably the only decent scene in the film, you know, maybe because Kate Blanchett gets hit. Anyway, so Benjamin goes to visit her because he's an idiot, and she's still frustrated at him, so she leaves and all that, and later on, and so years pass, and he ends up, you know, seeing a bunch of women, and then later in the early 60s, they get together, and they're both like, now they're about the same age or somewhere. Their ages are about there, at least physically. I think, you know, Benjamin's probably 10 years older than Daisy mentally. So they meet, and they reconcile. They end up, you know, falling in love, and they move in together in the 60s, and they end up having a child, Caroline. And that's how she finds out. She's really upset by that, finding out through this guy's diaries. You know, she didn't know who her father was until, you know, her mother's on her deathbed, you know. And so at this point, you know, Benjamin realizes, you know, tells Daisy that, you know, he will never be a proper father to her because eventually he realizes his condition, and he realizes that eventually he's going to be way too young to be a father. So she, you know, and Daisy's like, don't worry, I will figure it out. I'll take care of it. And so later in the 80s, when he's like probably physically in his mid 20s or so, they end up reuniting. Daisy's married with Daisy's married with Caroline. Well, not married to Caroline, but married, and Caroline's there and all that. And they end up having one last affair together, and then years later in the 90s, Benjamin is you know, but now a preteen, like in his teenager years, even though he's mentally like 60 and 70, and he's like showing signs of dementia. When he gets even younger, he's like on the roof and he wants to fly and all that. And by this point, Daisy ends up moving into the nursing home and taking care of Benjamin until his dying days and all that. And I guess it's the same nursing home that he grew up with Queenie and all that. So go figure. So anyway, at the end of the movie, in the end, I guess, of course, Benjamin dies as an infant in Daisy's arms as a little baby. You know, physically a baby, but mentally, physically. You get what I'm saying. This is all some cockamamie bullshit, you know. It's like, God, I was just like, oh, God, this doesn't happen, you know. And, of course, the final point they want to make is, I guess, that and just recently the clock was removed and a digital clock was put in its place that moves forwards and all that. And, yeah, and then I guess the hurricane hits, and then everybody dies, you know. But the clock still ticks on. Apparently, the clock is just put into storage, and the clock still ticks backwards. The old clock that the guy designed. Anyway, so yeah, impossible, inconceivable, overrated, and Kate Blanchett sucks. I just like, I didn't dig this movie. I thought it was pretty bad, yeah. But anyway, although I will say it is kind of cool that Brad Pitt got to use his daughter to play Caroline when she's born at the age of 2. Well, the child he had with Angelina Jolie, Shiloh Jolie Pitt played Caroline at a young age. So I thought that was kind of cool. That was another neat aspect of the movie. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, David Fincher is a really popular director. I mean, he's directed a lot of movies I've heard of, but not a lot of movies that I've seen. Just to go through some of his films, I mean, Seven, The Game, Fight Club, Panic Room, The Social Network, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl. Yeah, he's done all these movies. He directed some of House of Cards. Has he done any? Oh, he's done some. Oh, he did a lot of music videos. Hang on. Now I've seen what music videos. Have I seen any of these music videos that he's directed? We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off by Jermaine Stewart. Okay. Let's see. Englishman in New York, huh? Sting. Interesting. Roll With It, Steve Winwood. Oh, okay. Interesting. Straight Up by Paul Abdul. Okay, so this guy actually has some credits as a film director. Cradle of Love, Vogue. He was the one who directed Vogue. Ah. Only David Nine Inch Nails. Holy shit. All right. Well, interesting. And of course Brad Pitt. You know, in Fight Club and Seven and other movies that he did. So I guess it's one of those things where it's like you work with people you know and all that. Anyway, yeah. So I understand if you like this movie. I understand if you get lost in the story and the magic and all that. But for me, I just can't bring myself to dig this shit. I mean, first of all, one of the most shocking things, and that I didn't mention earlier, is that this might be the only movie that doesn't feature the Criterion Collection logo at the beginning. You don't see it. In fact, probably because Criterion weren't allowed to put, because of the distribution rights, Criterion weren't allowed to put their logo before the movie because it just starts off right with the logo. Unless it was like a flash second and I missed it or something, but when I hit play, I saw it just start with the Paramount logo. So yeah, so that's weird. I think it's the first and probably only the first time I've ever not seen the Criterion Collection logo in front of it. And again, that's probably because of distribution rights and all that. Because I think there are, obviously Paramount has reissued this movie without Criterion's help, but this is the issue we want, But yeah, so, oh god, I've gone on too long. So yeah, I am not a fan. I do not like this movie. It's terrible. Well, it's not terrible, but it's overrated. It's not. It doesn't deserve. Again, it doesn't deserve half the accolades it does. And you can understand, and you might even agree with me. You might say, and if you do agree with me, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this movie. If you personally think this movie was overrated, and you agree with me, I'd love to know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Because I'd love to. I feel like I always get a lot of criticism for not liking movies, but I feel like with this movie, a lot of people do like it, but at the same time, I feel like I know there's some people out there that have got to not like it. If that makes sense, I know I'm not alone with my thoughts, on this particular movie. So, if you did not like this movie, please comment below. But anyway, yeah. So, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. God, what do I give this? Not giving it an A. I'm not even going to give it a B. I will give it I'll give it a C. No, I gotta give it a C. A C for the wait. Oh, this is backwards. So, yeah, give it a C for the Criterion Collection logo that didn't show up in the beginning of the movie. Yeah, a C for Criterion. Yeah. So, yeah, I would just ignore this one. Supplements. Oh God. There's like 9 hours of supplements too on the second disc, and it's all put in like a big 3-hour documentary or something. First trimester, second trimester, 10,000 trailers, just interviews with the whole cast and all these people and stuff like that, and shows cinematography and the special effects and all that crap. Everything you always wanted to know about Benjamin Button, but never fucking asked for. So. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if I'm sure that there are issues of the movie that don't feature everything on here. So, I just realized it's probably the 10-year anniversary of this movie, so we're probably going to get a Blu-ray reissue of it or something. I don't know. But anyway, this movie's terrible. This movie is pretty bad. See Curious Case of Benjamin Button. See blah 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 blah. Oh dear God. Anyway, so that's it for me for now. Next, Bergman Island, which I'm going to shoot right after this because I actually watched this yesterday and did Curious Case of Benjamin Button today. Go figure. I said I was going to do them in reverse, but I didn't think I had enough time, and I meant to do this yesterday, but I didn't have enough time to do the review, so in 5 seconds you're going to see this, probably. So anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Kate Blanchett sucks. Taraji B. Henson sucks. And don't build clocks that go backwards. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that's all I got. And don't be Benjamin Button. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you all in a little bit for Bergman Island. God damn it, can't stop saying that fucking name. Bergman Island. That movie almost makes me want to watch a Bergman movie. Well, almost any Bergman movie. I'm not watching Cries and Whispers again. Anyway, until then, goodbye.